You know, my father used to say, my daughter is such a strange creature. And you know what? He was right. I came here when I was 17, not knowing how to speak English. But that's not what makes me strange. Today, I stand before you, having overcome every obstacle imaginable to achieve a long-held professional dream. But that's not what makes me strange either. What makes me strange is this. Whereas everyone sees this achievement as a great accomplishment, to me, it was in fact a great failure. Let me tell you why. I am the firstborn daughter of an Iranian family. And Iranians, at least when I was growing up there, believe that women are second-class citizens. Unless, of course, it comes to their own daughter. Then there's an expectation, and that is that she needs to attain the highest education, so become a doctor, engineer, a lawyer, and then be an exemplary wife and mother whose house is showcased in the Home and Garden magazine, and she's the mother of the year every year until she dies. So my father was a strong believer in this philosophy. And so it wasn't unusual for me to hear things like, what, your math teacher is a woman? Oh, no wonder you don't know how to do this problem the right way, my way, right? Or God forbid someone drove the wrong way on the street. That's a broad. Broads never learn how to drive, right? So from the very beginning, I developed this fierce tug of war within me, where on the one hand, I was going to fight to prove my father wrong and show everyone and him that women can indeed do it just as well as men can. And on the other hand, if I did, maybe I could win his approval. Now, in our elitist community, a well-rounded child did a lot of extracurricular activities, and one of mine was piano. I loved piano. I loved classical music, and I practiced every day. And I remember my piano teacher, who was a very stern woman, who didn't dole out compliments very easily. And she was trained at the Vienna Conservatory, very prestigious. One day told me, I can train you for the Vienna Conservatory. And I thought, oh, heaven. I road-runnered home, leaving a trail of dust behind to tell my parents about my bright future. And then they said, oh, that's a great hobby. But what do you want to do for a real job? You don't want to be a busker, do you? It was kind of like that ALS ice bucket right on top of my head. Right? We lived in Iran through the revolution and the Iran-Iraq war. So by the time we actually got to the States, there was no question that my parents had uplifted their lives to come to the States only so my brothers and I can get a good education. And so we finally made it. We were here, and I could take my scarf off and be free and be whoever I wanted to be. I decided I'm going to be a doctor. But medicine took too long. So I figured if I did dentistry, I could still be a career woman, and I could have a shot at that home and garden house and the perfect kids. There was one little problem. I hated teeth. But who cares about love and hate when it comes to a job, right? You do a job to make money. So I went to dental school anyways. And I really enjoyed the first couple of years. But then by the third year, those dreaded pearly whites showed up. And I remember every time I did a filling, all my sphincters would tighten up, right? And I didn't want to live a life in rigor mortis, so I figured I'm going to specialize. And the specialty that I kind of liked was oral and maxillofacial surgery because it was more than teeth. It was head and neck surgery, but also because it was a boys' club. And my dad said something like, that's such a masculine field. Why don't you just stick with dentistry? And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm going to oral surgery. The issue with oral surgery, though, was that it was the hardest residency, the longest and the most difficult for women to get into. In fact, one of the programs that I interviewed at hadn't taken a woman in 17 years. And when I got in, I was the only woman in our program. But then that same pattern of women aren't as good as men are, of Iran, started to repeat here in the US the higher I got in my education. And so I had to work really hard to prove myself. And I remember one night I was on call, and in our on-call room at the hospital, I found a porn magazine. And so I started to flip through it. Oh, come on, like you wouldn't, right? I'm flipping through when I come to a section titled Chicks with Dicks. And it's confusing, right? Yeah. Right, so, but then again, who are we to judge? To each his own, right? Well, but then it occurred to me that that was a perfect metaphor for who I had to become to succeed in the field. And that I did. I mean, I worked hard, I did well in my rotations, and I graduated one cocky surgeon, making a good living and enjoying the prestige. But then a few years down the line, I used in private practice, I started to feel great sadness. And it was so bad that I would actually leave practice, get in my car, and tears would stream down my face. And I thought that's not a way for a chick with a dick to behave. There are no tears in oral surgery, right? So I thought, I'm gonna beat this sadness. I'm gonna go to the gym 2 hours a day, and I'm gonna beat this thing. And it worked. You know how? I was so exhausted I couldn't feel anymore. And so a few days, some time passed, and I think I was standing one day at the office with this emotion sort of buried, and I started to have chest pain that radiated down my left arm and shoulder, and that's a heart attack until proven otherwise. Office staff called 911, ambulance came, and they whisked me to the hospital right in front of my patient. It was so embarrassing. And they did a workup at the hospital. There was nothing wrong with me. And I thought, well, maybe I need a break. I better go someplace and clear my head, because that's where I lived most of my life. And so I decided I was going to go to some wellness center. But then when I got there, something magical happened. I actually realized that I could somehow let my hair down. And not only that, this place was an amazing 3,000 square feet or acres, I think, acres, 3,000 acres of beautifully manicured gardens set in the mountain skirts of Mount Cuchuma in Tecate, Mexico. It was a festival for the senses. There were sculptures all strewn about the garden, birds chirping, and there were like sweet, sweet scents of jasmines to get intoxicated on, and wholesome food, so good that I forgot I had a mind. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have a body. And I decided I was gonna take care of my body for that week. And instead of doing my usual kickboxing and weightlifting, I was going to do yoga and dance and just sort of go where my body took me. And one morning, it took me to the labyrinth. And it was a crisp, cool morning. There was a little breeze that nipped at my arm and shoulders, and it dinged a little chime that was hanging in a tree. And with that ding, I started to walk the path of the labyrinth. And out of nowhere, a question came. What do you want? I didn't have an answer for that, because no one had asked me that before, including me. So there was silence. The question kept coming. What do you want? What do you want? Finally, something less than a whisper from the center of my chest said, I don't want to do oral surgery anymore. Excuse me? You've been in school for 24 years, have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loans? You don't want to do oral surgery anymore? Pull yourself together, right? But no matter how much I tried to suppress this voice, it kept coming. What else do you want? I want to travel. And I want to be a storyteller. That's it, nothing else. And so I basically imagined that's a very interesting story, very cool experience, tucked it away and went back to work. 6 months passed. One fine day at work, I started to feel severe pain in the middle of my chest, exactly the same spot that the voice had come from. And this pain got progressively worse throughout the day until I collapsed on the floor of my office and had to be taken to the emergency room with dangerously low blood pressure. They admitted me, gave me some medications, IV fluids, and as those medicines were going in, I decided it's time to leave oral surgery. And I gave my notice shortly after so I could follow this dream of being an artist, a writer, a storyteller. I had arrived, hadn't I? I was at the top of the mountain. A woman who didn't speak a word of English succeeded in a male-dominated field. Right? I was the poster child for the immigrant success story and a role model for women's rights to boot. And now I was throwing it all away over some foolish pipe dream of an artist. As far as my friends and family were concerned, that was my failure. But leaving oral surgery wasn't my failure. It was hard charging up that mountain, fighting tooth and nail to get there, and standing at the top and then realizing I'm on the wrong mountain. My failure was becoming the best at who I wasn't. It was ignoring the truth of my heart, the sound of my own voice, that of an artist, a writer, a storyteller who may not succeed or make a killing or win the respect of her community. My failure was lacking the courage to be me sooner. Thank you.